Hey, welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we give actionable bite-sized tips to help you navigate your acting career. I'm your host, Martin Bentsen, and today we're going to be talking about how to get started in acting as a teenager. So regardless of who you are or how old you are, the steps are generally fairly similar. But there are, of course, a few differences specifically for teenagers that I'm going to get into in this episode. The first step to really getting into acting is that you actually need to make sure that you enjoy it, because it's not all just fun and games as some people I've spoken to think it is. You have to actually love it, because there's auditions and you're going to be facing rejection and all kinds of things that are difficult, and you don't want to spend so much time of your life trying to do it and spend all kinds of money on headshots, etc., only to realize that it's not the right career path for you. So that's why I recommend, as a first step, just taking some classes or doing some free community theater work for a few months just to see how you like it. Is it right for you? Once you do that, then it's time to start getting auditions. And you want to do this on your own. So the second step is to aim to book at least 2 to 3 unpaid projects and then 2 to 3 paid projects. Okay? So you need to do this on your own, and that involves creating casting profiles online and responding to casting calls that you find and just submitting yourself. And then you'll occasionally be invited to submit a self-tape, and you want to turn those self-tapes into bookings. At first it'll be really hard. Maybe in a month you'll respond to 20 casting calls and you won't get any auditions. And then the next month goes by and you submit yourself for another 20 casting calls, and maybe you only get 1 audition or 1 self-tape invite, and you don't book it because they don't like your performance. This can go on for some time. Obviously, there's ways to shortcut the process, like if you work with a coach or you really study some of the things that I teach in these podcast episodes. But the idea is it's gonna take a little bit of time to book your first, ideally 3 to 5 or 4 to 6 credits that are for speaking roles, not background work where you don't say anything. You have to actually have lines. Again, these can be unpaid projects, some of them, and some paid projects, mostly all probably for independent projects that are not union affiliated. At that point, your next step, once you have those 3 to 5 or 6 credits, you can start looking for an agent who will be able to connect you with much bigger productions. And that's when your career is really going to start moving forward. Okay? So that's essentially the process you'll follow. First, you find out whether you enjoy it. Second, you start getting auditions and turn those into bookings. And then once you have about 3 to 5 bookings and those credits are on your resume, you start looking for an agent. That's essentially how to get started in acting, regardless of what your age range is. And again, in a minute, we're going to dive deep on specifics for teenagers to take into consideration. But before we do that, I want to briefly tell you about my mini course called Kickstart Your Acting Career. This is a 5-day course that dives deep on how to start getting consistent auditions if you don't have an agent, any credits, or a reel yet. Getting consistent auditions for legitimate projects is going to be critical if you want to start building your resume and actually have a shot at getting an agent. And so that's what Kickstart is all about. It's just about getting started from square one, or very, very minimal. Like if you're not getting at least 1 or 2 or 3 auditions per week, then you'll probably benefit by joining Kickstart your acting career. The website called kickstartminicourse.com. So Kickstart Mini Course, M-I-N-I, minicourse.com is where you can go to learn more info and to sign up for the course. Okay, so let's talk about teenagers. So there's a few specific things that I want you to keep in mind if you're a teenager and you're looking to get into acting. First thing, do not assume that acting is all about becoming famous. Okay. I get emails almost every day from people asking, how do I get an agent right away because I want to be in much bigger productions? And I say, well, how much experience do you have? How many speaking credits? And they're like, well, I'm brand new. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. You have to love acting and be willing to put in time before your career will grow in a significant way. It's all about trust. People for major production companies are only going to bring in people that they trust a lot. And most of the time, it's very difficult to get that trust if you don't have anything on your resume yet and if you don't have any footage showing your acting ability. So you need to get some of that stuff first. And in some cases, it can take a couple of years before you book your first significant large role in a big project. Second thing to keep in mind as a teenager, auditioning is part of the job. You want to use auditioning as a way to practice and refine your acting skills, in addition, of course, to taking classes and working with a coach if you decide to do that. But you have to actually enjoy auditioning or you're never going to get booked. You shouldn't look at auditioning as like, oh, this thing that I have to deal with. It's more like part of what you do. It's sort of like, I run a photography company called City Headshots, and while I could say I love taking pictures, I also have to love the marketing side of it as well. I have to love working on my website and knowing how to talk to clients and knowing how to take a deposit so that they don't just flake out at the last minute. You have to deal with all these other sides that are not just the acting, that are a reality-based, important part of the process if you want to grow your career. So auditioning must be something that you start to enjoy, because if you're always nervous and you hate auditions, I can almost guarantee that you're going to give up before you book your first significant role. I do actually have a useful article that I highly recommend you check out. It's called How to Prepare for an Audition. And in it, I dive deep on this concept of you have to not over prepare for an audition, because if you do that and if you stress out too much about the audition, you're not going to enjoy auditioning, which again is going to hurt your performance and make you audition worse. So in that article, I kind of talk about how to prepare in a way that's not too much, but also doing enough that you prepare properly. So if you want to find that article, all you have to do is go onto Google and type City Headshots. That's CITY Headshots with an S. Type in City Headshots, how to prepare for an audition, and the article should show up. Okay, third thing to keep in mind as a teenager. Well, when you are young, as in teenager age, it's actually easier to get an agent than once you get into your 20s. Why? Well, because once people graduate from college, that's when they start looking for an agent and trying to grow their career. But if you're getting into acting as a teenager and you're starting to actually look for real auditions now, you have way less competition. And also because you're young, most agents will assume that you don't have as many credits on your resume and they're not going to be as, specific and overly particular, let's say, as they would when considering someone who's in their 20s or 30s. So now, even though it is easier to get an agent, they're still going to be discerning. So regardless, though, I do recommend that you actually start looking for an agent while you're submitting yourself and trying to build up those first 3 to 5 credits. As long as your acting technique is on point, whether you're working with an acting coach, by the way, I do acting coaching one-to-one over Zoom. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email at martin@cityheadshots.com and I can explain my rates. But if you're working with a coach and they're making sure that your performances are on point because they really need to be great, many agents won't actually require you to have that many credits, those first 3 to 5, if you're still a teenager. But they really will require that your acting technique to be on point and natural and just outstanding. So that's why, as a teenager, you could find an acting coach and sort of shortcut the process a lot if you refine your technique and it's really, really good and you submit an amazing self-tape. You could get a great agent and book something way sooner than usually most people who are in their 20s or 30s. It does take a little bit more time at that point. Okay, back to our list here. So number 4. As a teenager, you want to, and this goes for anybody, but you really want to be aware of scammers. Everyone out there is, there's a lot of people out there who are bad, who are trying to take advantage of young people just because they assume that they're naive and they don't really understand things as much. So just be really careful, especially if you're looking for an agent. I've said this before, and in a podcast episode, I think it was my first podcast episode on how to get an agent. The whole idea of agents should not charge you fees outright. They always take a commission. So just make sure that whoever you're signing with is not like, oh, there's a $30 web hosting fee. Oh, you have to take headshots with our photographer and that's $600. That's like all scams and stuff. So avoid that and just focus on agents who take commission only. Now, 5th thing. A college degree is not actually required for actors to get acting work. I know many actors who have been booked in amazing acting jobs and they decided to skip college altogether. The fact is, you can always come back to college later in life if you want, whereas let's say if you're a dancer on Broadway, there's a very limited age window where you can actually do that work. And college is going to actually eat up some of those years. Plus, it takes away time and availability for you to make it to auditions. Now, I'm not against college or particularly for it. I will have a podcast episode coming out soon on whether you should actually consider college or drop out. But for now, just know that college is not a requirement to book acting work. Now, number 6, do not take rejection personally. When you're young, it can be a real blow to get brutally rejected in an audition room. But honestly, the truth is these people don't really care. It's just a job to them and they're just picking someone. So like all the people that they don't pick are going to move on and they're going to forget you the moment that you leave the room. So it's not like, like they're personally angry with you or personally think that you were terrible or anything like that. It's their job to pick someone and they didn't pick you and they just thanked you and moved on and you just can't take it personally. It's just move on to the next one. Here's a good quote that I love. And it's funny because it kind of shows the breakdown of ages and how we think about things. So when I was 20 years old, I always worried about what people were thinking of me. When I was 40 years old, I finally stopped caring about what people were thinking of me. And when I became 60, I realized no one ever was thinking about me. And if they were wondering what I was thinking of them. So that quote just goes to show the truth of the situation is that really most people are worrying about themselves and the job that they have to do. It's rare, unless someone truly hates you and has a vendetta out against you, that they are going to be doing something personally against you. It's just, this is part of the job, got to pick someone and move on. So do not take rejection personally. All right, last one and potentially the most important one for teenagers in particular is to stay safe. When you're under 18, you're going to need an adult to sign paperwork for you in general. So I do recommend having an adult come with you to as many auditions and meetings as possible. You really don't know who you're dealing with these days, and you do want to be careful, especially in big cities where you could be meeting anyone. There are, creeps, weirdos out there, so please be safe. Don't take unnecessary risks. Often, as unfortunate as this sounds, the roles that sound the most life-changing are almost always the biggest scams, and some of them are, in particular, extra unsafe. They'll try to convince you to come in right away for some life-changing opportunity, but honestly, nothing life-changing ever requires a split-second decision. in general, unless it's a scam. So most of those real life-changing acting opportunities are going to actually give you time to think about it and look through the contract and make a decision. So be careful, bring an adult with you, stay safe. Now, before we wrap here, I want to briefly tell you about my own career coaching services for actors. As I mentioned earlier, I not only coach actors in their career, but I also do coaching for your performance. I've directed 2 feature films, and I coach actors a lot on set when we're shooting scenes for their demo reels through actorscreenershoot.com. And I work with actors all across the world over Zoom, and I help them get unstuck and grow their careers. My 2 main offerings, one is a great email coaching program. It's more affordable, and we would communicate through text and audio recordings. We have weekly check-ins, and basically I just kind of give you the next steps to take to move through your career as quickly as possible and grow it. Otherwise, a more in-depth Zoom coaching program where we actually do live weekly meetings together. If you have an interest in either of these, email me directly at martin@cityheadshots.com, and I'll explain the details. Again, that is Martin, Martin, at city, C-I-T-Y, headshots with an S.com. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening today. All I have is one ask, as always, which is if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or even on Spotify. You'll get notifications of future episodes, and it also helps me by making these episodes more easily findable because they'll be recommended to other actors the more people that subscribe. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next episode.